Hello, everybody.
Hi.
That was
Really loud.
Right, just going to get my bearings here. We're from BNZ Digital, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about our experiences with Lean UX. So thank you everyone for showing up. Thanks Agile New Zealand for having us. I've just got my notes in my pocket, and I'm going to put them over here. Hopefully I don't have to refer to them. But right, let's get started. My name's Claire Jaycock. I'm a senior designer. I'm on Twitter, doing some Twitter things, and also BNZ Digital. If you want to tweet at us or whatever, we're good with pixels. This is Ant.
So my name is Ant Boobier, practice coach at BNZ Digital. And there's Twitter up there as well if you're interested in that. So look, we're going to tell you a story today, and it's a story about change, and it's a story about language and how words can have a profound effect on our models and the way we view our world. It's also a story about change and how practices team at BNZ Digital, the delivery team, and the design UX team at BNZ Digital came together and reevaluated what Agile actually is for us. So I joined BNZ Digital about a year ago, and it's high fives all around. It's an organisation that's been doing Agile for a long time. Since about 2009, it's well established. They're building things efficiently and effectively as possible. They're coming off the back of some big programs of work, migrating people from old PC banking onto new internet banking and mobile banking, and it's working pretty efficiently. And one of the things that I wanted to do, being a coach coming in, is you look to observe. You look to observe what's going on, gather some data. And the first thing I did is go around the 20 teams that we had across BNZ Digital, across our 3 tribes, and do like a health check. It's not one of those big kind of horrible maturity models. I hate those things. It's a Spotify-style health check. Has anybody heard of the Spotify-style health check? Yep, a few of you. It's 11 questions. You go around the teams and you're looking for patterns. You're looking to see where things are working really well, where things aren't working quite so well. We added a couple of questions because it seemed to make more sense for us. So we went round and we went across our 20 teams, and there's a couple of patterns that came out, a couple of key patterns that made us sit up and think, actually, this is a thing that we need to focus on. This is the thing that we need to concentrate on. And that was that the teams felt like pawns rather than players. That was that they felt like they were told what to build and how to build it, rather than having input into what to build and how to build that thing. And as I mentioned, we were coming off the back of some big programs of work, some big programs of migration, and the perception often was that, these teams were given a UI, given a design, and they were just given this thing, and then they had to go and build this thing as efficiently and effectively as possible. So I want to look to see, how can we, as a practices team, look to make sure we can free people up? How can we make them get more involved, make them feel that they've got input into the products we're building, make sure we've got that passion in terms of the products? But also, how can we efficiently get that flow going? How can we extend Agile from the delivery teams out to the design team, out to UX, and down to release as well? So started to look at this, looked at the design team, and look, they ran a very agency model at that stage. And to them, Agile was a bit of a dirty word. It was something that developers did. It was something that sat in a bit of a development box, and it wasn't really something they got too involved with.
Yeah, so design and Agile, it's just a little bit awkward. Like, I think that our relationship was just a little bit awkward, or for me, even quite non-existent. Like Ant was saying, we kind of saw it as a bit of a dev thing, a delivery kind of tool. And being designers, a lot of us have come from agencies and studios, so we're used to running waterfall. We're not used to having devs in-house with us. So we would, the client would come in, we'd get a brief, we'd go away, we'd research, we'd concept, we'd build out the concept and deliver a spec doc, and then hand it off to some mystery dev team that we've never met before. And if we were lucky, we'd get to see the finished product, and we'd proceed to freak out about it being not the right shade of blue, or the kerning's all wrong, or they've used stock photography. So that wasn't really ideal. These days, things are changing, and there's a lot of tech shops that are getting more design teams in-house. At BNZ Digital, we've got 9 designers, and probably like 20 dev teams. And, you know, Xero, TradeMe, PowerShop, they're all doing it. It's a cool thing to do. But I think that we still haven't cracked that relationship between Agile and design. I know we haven't anyway. And that's, I guess, where Lean UX has started to come in. So we're all working towards the same thing, you know. We all want to build great digital experiences. We all want to solve real problems. But like any kind of awkward relationship, we need some common ground to start from. We need to build a shared understanding and a shared language.
So it's probably important to point out as well that Claire and myself work more on the business banking side. So we've got 3 tribes at BNZ Digital. We've got a retail tribe, a collection of teams who look after the retail banking and the internet banking. We've got a dub tribe who look at non-authenticated site content. And then we tend to look more at the business banking side, so the big SMEs and the big corporates and people like that. And we'd end up in these conversations and these philosophical debates. You know, we'd have these philosophical debates. What's better? Agile? Is it lean? Should we be doing good design sprints? Human-centered design? What should we be doing? And then we had a bit of epiphany, and that was that, you know what? We want the same thing. We want exactly the same thing. We want the same goals. We want to bring value to our customer. We're just not talking the same language. Instead of talking about why we do things, we're talking about frameworks. We're talking about practices. And we're getting really lost in that. And what we needed was a vehicle for change, something that could bring us together and create a common identity for us. And that's where Lean UX came in.
So, into Lean UX. At BNZ Digital, we've kind of been dabbling with Lean UX for a while. I saw the canvas around a wee bit. There was talk about iterating, measuring, stuff like that. But teams were kind of picking and choosing what they wanted to do, and just experimenting with little bits and pieces. I saw it used to quite good effect with our dub team, our marketing site. They were putting small pieces of work into production and measuring the effect that they had, and then getting back in there and making any changes to help improve the service that they were providing. Now, I'm the lead designer on business banking, so when I saw my fellow designer having this good time over on dub and making this progress, I got pretty jealous. That looked really cool. I wanted to be making like real effect and real inroads to what our customers need and want. So I started to research a little bit. I looked up this Lean UX thing. I was reading the book. And as I was doing that, I kind of realized that there was a few other people around me doing the same kind of thing and had been looking into Lean UX. Nat and Victoria, who you might have seen speak yesterday, they'd been looking into it. So we kind of banded together and joined forces, started to try and sell this concept into our leadership team, to our dev teams. We tried to get a bit of a pilot going on. As you can imagine, though, there's plenty of hurdles, especially in a big organisation, and selling a bunch of business banking dev teams into a new process and a new way of working was pretty hard. We really had to think on our feet. So we were in sessions with our teams doing exercises and realising they just weren't working. We had to change them on the fly. We had to throw them out the window and try something completely new. We failed heaps. We had plenty of failures, plenty of successes. And it was a really interesting process. But today we want to talk to you guys about the most surprising observation, that the most surprising but empowering thing that came out of all of this. And that is language is powerful. And you're like, duh, we all know that. There's plenty of people that have written speeches and authors and poets before us that have told us that. But in the context of Lean UX, this has been really surprising and really helpful to us. So to us, Lean UX it's a process, it's a philosophy, right? It's not a language experiment. But during our time of introducing Lean UX to the teams, we kind of unassumingly introduce this new vocabulary, and it's not words that, it's not new words, we all know the words, but it's resetting the context of those words, it's getting everyone on the same page, it's getting a shared understanding of what those words mean to us, to our teams, to how we make work, how we do projects. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to run through some of those words and what they mean to us and how they've really helped. We're just going to do a little bit of a vocab exploration.
So the first word that we found really powerful, and this is at the heart of everything we do, it's the most important, and look, it's the most obvious word that we use, it's customer. And it's obvious and it's important, but you know what? We rarely use it. When we're delivering things, we often lose sight of why we're delivering a product. We often lose sight that the customer's at the heart of everything we do. The customer's the most important thing, and we're looking to deliver a product to a customer. We're looking for that relationship. How can we connect with that customer? How can we make sure we're delivering value to that customer? And we kept reiterating customer. You probably saw the lean canvas just now. That went on the wall for every single team. Every single team had a lean canvas. And actually, we started off with the word persona on there. And that was great. You know, the persona is really useful. And you may well have seen Natalie and Victoria's presentation yesterday on attitudinal personas. But you know what? A persona is a means to an end. A persona is a means to an end for us to connect to our customer. So actually, we soon changed that word because it was confusing people from persona to users and customers. And one thing that we mustn't forget, we're in business banking and retail banking, their tribe. You know what? Fundamentally, they're delivering a product to an end customer, an end user. And often, the people who are developing the stuff are customers as well. So they can kind of fill that gap. They can get that connection to that customer very easily. And one thing we could never forget is we are not our customer. We are not business bankers. We are not large corporates. We are not these different business banks, right down to small people who own a coffee shop. We're not business bankers. So we need mechanisms where we can connect to our customer and make sure we're building the right thing for them. Make sure we're understanding what their need is and make sure that we're getting some good success.
So the next word, problem. I guess Lean UX is all about outcomes, not outputs. I feel like I've heard that a few times over the last couple of days. But it's essentially about solving a problem rather than building a feature with a bunch of requirements. So that kind of shift in thinking for our teams have been pretty huge. Before now, you know, you get given a project has a name. You dive straight in and you efficiently and enthusiastically build what it says on the box, right? But by looking at what the problem is that you're trying to solve rather than what you've been asked to build, it gives you permission to kind of really unpick things and make sure what you're building is the right thing. So for example, we had a project that came to us called payment templates. So we would have just gone away and built a payment template, and it would have been fine. It would have been, you know, our customers still would have been able to make payments the way that they need to do. But when we really looked at it and we really figured out what we were doing for our customer, we realized that our customers need a straight through, on the fly, short process to put a payment through that's going to get processed today, and then everyone gets notified. It's pretty nerdy bank stuff, but... So that's what we built. Had we built templates, we would have given them a repeatable payment that you know, kind of implies you're going to be paying multiple people per time. So by focusing on the problem we're going to solve, we were able to adjust the trajectory of kind of where we're aiming, and so we hit the bullseye rather than kind of just landing in that good enough area.
So, assumption. And assumptions is probably the most important word that we use and the most important part of our vocabulary. It's our foundational word, and it's certainly our favourite. And fundamentally what we do is assumptions-driven development. Everything we do is a guess, a best guess. But what we look to do is we look to try and go around that empirical framework. We look to try and validate that best guess as quickly as we possibly can. We look to learn as frequently and as quickly as we can. And we don't start with requirements, we start with assumptions. We don't have someone who comes into the room who's the expert, the hippo, that highly paid professional opinion, who comes in and tells us, this is a fact, this is exactly what we need to build. We start with his assumptions. And it's really cathartic for seeing a team when you talk about assumptions. You can almost see them exhale when we start to talk about assumptions rather than facts. There's a sense of relief, and it gives them a permission to start thinking about experimenting and what can we do. So assumptions is probably our most important word that we have.
Yeah, assumptions has been the most exciting thing for me. I feel like this has got the best out of our teams. If you all left here today just remembering one thing, I hope it's assumptions. Take that back to your teams and explore it. It's empowered our teams and every member of our team to kind of politely challenge anything. It's pretty easy to take a confidently delivered personal opinion as fact, or if you're told it by your bosses or someone that you think knows what they're doing, you can take that as fact pretty easily. But by setting the scene with assumptions, we can pick that all apart, and it's not an offensive kind of act. So customer restraints, technical restraints, business problems, budget, even personal opinion, that's all up for grabs. We've kind of found that in doing this, there are two really major assumptions that always need to be addressed straight up, that we need to talk about. So we're going from talking about our customers, do our customers want this, to do our customers really need this? And instead of talking about how we're going to build something, we're talking about, do we actually need to build something? Is software really the answer? Like, is there something else we can do that will be faster and cheaper and better for our customers? And this might sound really weird, but the coolest thing that has come out of this whole assumptions exercise is that we've had projects cancelled, we've had scope decreased, we've had things put on hold. We had a year project cancelled because after digging into the assumptions that this thing is actually relevant now, we found out there was really only 3 customers that needed this thing, and they were more than happy to call us up and get a PDF of the information that they needed, rather than us having to build an entire interface for them to access that information. So I just really quickly want to run you through this exercise because it's been super, super helpful for us. It's straight out of the Lean UX book. It's you've got top to bottom is high impact and low impact, and left to right is known and unknown. So get your whole crew into the room at the start of a project and get everything out on the table. Give them all post-it notes, get them to write down what they think they know, what they think they assume, their personal opinions. It's all up for grabs. And then we get together and we chart them out on this. And anything that gets clustered up in that top right-hand corner, those are the high-impact, unknown assumptions, and they're the ones that you want to tackle straight away because they are the ones that could be the downfall of your project. If you don't validate them straight away, then you could be building the completely wrong thing or solving the wrong problem or talking to the wrong customers. So you're going to end up with a pretty big cluster up in that right-hand corner, and the next step, I guess, is addressing how you're going to validate those things.
So as Claire mentioned there, like the Lean Canvas, what we do to get get the assumption sheet, whack it next to the team so they can see what those assumptions are, and we do it at the start of the project. We do it at the start of a piece of work. So the first thing we do is we don't size up requirements, we don't size up work, we weigh up assumptions. And we take that top right quadrant and we look at those high risk, unknown assumptions, and you know what, automatically it's giving us permission to go out there and prove or disprove one of these best guesses that we have. And what we found is fundamentally there are roughly 3 categories that we look at when we think about how we're going to validate or invalidate an assumption. The first of those is, you know what, talk to a customer. Sounds reasonable, go out, talk to a customer. Does someone actually need this thing? We have a usability team, usability researchers, and we get team, and they host sessions. We get teams to go out and talk to them, get feedback. Are they actually going to use this thing? One team, actually on the business mobile team, they were building a small feature for small businesses, and they worked out that the guy downstairs in the coffee shop used primarily the business mobile app for his work. So what do? They went downstairs and they brought loads of coffee from his cafe. He made him really happy. And they would run some ideas past him. And they would observe him using his mobile app. So they gathered some really great data. And again, they got that they validated, invalidated some things, and they got that real relationship and connection to the customer. The second category we look at is seek some data. And we've got a pretty good analytics team in BNZ Digital, and we use a number of tools, including Tableau and Splunk. And those are great, gathering data. Other things that we look at, things such as feedback forms, what have customers said in the past, gathering that sort of information, NPS, And also competitor analysis. Where are competitors going here and overseas, and what can we gather? And the third thing is we pop something into production. And you know what? Sometimes we just don't have enough information. It may be new. It may be something. We just want to pop them into production, an experiment, an MVE as we call it, a minimum viable experiment or minimum viable experience, something that's low risk, that's got a low blast area, that's going to get us some data and some feedback. And often the first thing we put into production is some analytics, gathering some data. And it's amazing, having these assumptions and putting it into these categories, it gives the team permission to pause.
Okay, so we've got assumptions and validations. We've kind of got this new realm or this time for our teams to research and go out and check out the problem that we're solving. But what happens when you realize the thing that you've been asked to build is wrong? You've got to go back to the person that asked you to build it, and you've got to say, no, not yet, let's do something else. And that's kind of all well and good. We've armed our teams with the knowledge, with the information, with the confidence to do this, but getting them to actually do it is kind of another story. This isn't what we do. We get billed to asked to build something, and we build it awesomely. We don't go back and go, oh, no, that's a stupid idea. So my personal plan to address this was a bit of rabble-rousing. I'd go into meetings and I'd be like, let's just say no. Who are these guys? They don't know. We've been employed as the specialists. We know what we're doing. Let's, just trying to amp everyone up and kind of screw the man kind of business, which kind of worked a little bit. But the real turning point was kind of adoption of this attitude by our leadership team. We've had repeatedly been encouraged to be rebellious in those exact terms as well, which it's great, it's put everyone on the same page, and everyone has realized that, we're allowed to push back. We are expected to push back. That is our job. And I realize that not everyone is lucky enough to be in an organization with a leadership team that would do that for them. So I guess all I can encourage is to persevere. If you're doing this process and you've had a few successes, then hopefully you'll slowly be able to bring the leadership team along on this journey with you. So just say no or not yet. That's me too. So just briefly, I wanted to talk about the word experiment. Not all words that we've been using or introducing have had a positive effect. In the business banking kind of world, an experiment gone wrong, or even the rumor of an experiment gone wrong, could cause us to lose millions of dollars. It could cost a customer to lose millions of dollars. So rightly so, everyone's a little bit freaked out about this. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't experiment, because we should, but we have to be super smart about it. I think Anne mentioned earlier about limiting that blast area, making sure we're experimenting in the right areas. We do also have to be really careful to set the scene with this word, because we've had some situations with some enthusiastic business leads, and we're on this lean UX kind of trip together. It's really exciting. We're doing experiments, and then he busts out to a room full of legal guys and risk guys and starts talking about experiments. He caused a mass heart attack. Everyone was pretty freaked out by the whole thing. So kind of remember yourself and remember to brief your teams that not everyone is on this lean UX journey with you. So we just have to be gentle with them.
So something that's important for us is outcomes. And you know what? We focus on outcomes rather than outputs. If we can minimize outputs to get the same outcome, that's an awesome result for us. And Claire mentioned there about that 52-week project, about same-day clear payments. Those are great outcomes where we're doing less work and we're getting the same result. We're getting the great result. So outcomes is a really important word for us. And very early on with our canvas, we look to start thinking about measures. How are we going to measure this stuff? How are we going to measure that we're being successful? And as soon as we started to go around and talk to people about measures, it had a profound effect on people. And it frightens the hell out of people as soon as you start talking about measures. You can see the color draining from their faces. They get very defensive. And Claire and I would talk about measures. And we'd end up in debates when we'd talk about, velocity and outcomes and things like this. And what we realized is there's actually two types of measures. Outcomes are our most important measures, but there's two types. And we have delivery health measures. And look, delivery health measures are important. It's about, the well-being of our teams, the driver. How are the teams? How are they doing? Have we got a good culture? Are we supporting our teams? Is it a good place to work? And that's one of the reasons why we brought in the health check as well, just to check in. And we run these health checks thirdly, sounded like a good word, every 4 months, just to make sure that people are in a good space. The other thing is the engine. So how's a product doing? Technical debt, how are we releasing, the sort of technical side of things. And then there's the speed. How fast are we going? What's our velocity? What's our cycle time? What's our throughput? Yeah, it's important, and it's important to talk about measures, but it's great if you're going 100 k's an hour, but if you're going in the wrong direction, you're just going to get to the wrong outcome much quicker. So the most important thing for us is outcomes, is what is the destination? Where are we looking to go? We'll talk about the delivery health measures and make sure that that's something that we can predict out, but outcomes for us are the most important thing. How do we measure that we're going in the right direction and we're being successful and delivering value for the business and for our customers?
Success. I said it. When we were practicing this
got
yesterday, I accidentally said success quite a bit. Okay, success is cool. It's a really great word, but it's one that we don't use enough. And I think in the talk just before this, we heard that a little bit too. So in a normal project, you get asked to build a thing, you put it in prod, and then move on to the next project. And we'd only ever revisit it if there was some loud complaints from customers or if stakeholders started kind of stepping in. But with Lean UX, before you even embark on a project, you define what it means to you and your team to succeed. So we now have somewhere to focus on. We're aiming for something, and we know when we're there. We know when we've done a good job, or a bad job, as it might be, and then we can fix it, hopefully. So measures of success can be quite subjective, though. Well, so far for us, they have been anyway. How do you know that you've succeeded? Is it time spent on page? Is it number of visits to your page? Is it turnover that has gone through the page? There's a whole load of them. But it can be as simple as just getting a feedback form on a new feature. So recently we had a project, and after a bit of convincing with the BL letting me get the devs to do a little bit more work, we implemented a feedback form straight after the first time a customer had used this new feature. And we put it in, and after a couple of days, feedback started rolling in, or in fact, immediately feedback started rolling in. People were really using the thing that we had made, and they were telling us what they liked and didn't like about it. This was a direct window to our customer using the thing that we had just spent months and weeks and days and years developing. So that was super cool. So over the first few days, we had 200 odd people using this. 70% of them said, "This is awesome, this is so sweet, good work, guys." 20% odd were like, "Yeah, this is good, this does the trick." And 10% were like, "This is dumb, this sucks, what did you do that for?" So 70% is a pretty good success rate. We were fairly happy with that. But the cool thing was that 10%, we were able to contact them and talk to them. We were able to find out where we were going wrong. So for some of them, they were just kind of like, "Oh, actually, I don't like change, so I just freaked out, but it's actually kind of good, so keep on with what you're doing." But the ones that had real problems, that there was things in the thing that we had built for them that they needed changing so they can continue to do their work and do their job every single day, we're now fixing them for them. We've already done some fixes, and then it's some prod. We've got some stuff in the backlog. We were able to directly take their feedback and action that. So that was super cool. The other thing about this now is we have a tangible number to kind of hang our hat on. We know that we're there, we've succeeded, we know what we need to fix. And we now have a soundbite, a way to articulate to each other, to our peers, to our bosses, our stakeholders, that we're doing a good job.
And look, success is important as well, not just because I wanted to say that word, but success is important as well because, we don't very often celebrate success on Agile teams. We spend so looking in terms of how can we improve, and it's great doing, what we've been doing with Lean UX, where we can celebrate those small successes. And the more successes we have, the more teams want it. The smaller batches we can have, the more MVEs we can have, rather than a big bang saying, let's have lots of frequent and small ones. There's words as well that you need to avoid, and we had some big fails, and this was one of them. And it's really the phrase "do whatever." And we meant "do whatever" to be, hey guys, hey team, you know the problem, you know the customer, you know the measures, you know the outcome, you know your assumptions. Right, off you go. Go and talk to a customer. And we wanted to empower teams. We wanted to make them autonomous. We wanted to make them so they could have input into what to build and how to build it. It had the reverse effect. It freaked them out. And what we found is a bit of an agile paradox where teams don't want to be told the destination. They don't want to be told what to build, but they want structure in the process. And very early on, we ran these workshops where we got this information together, and then we supported the team in coming up with some answers. And like any good change process, we brought food along because it's a good pattern. If you've ever read Linda Rising's book, Change, a good pattern, bring people together, break some food, and it really encourages talking, that sort of thing. And we brought bagels. And you know what? The only thing people remember about those workshops is not what they did, it's the bagels. And those days became known as bagel days. And whenever we got something wrong, whenever teams didn't understand something or there was confusion, we just said, hang on, stop, we've had a bagel day, we need to reset. So what we looked at doing was making sure that Claire and myself were facilitating those sessions, we were supporting the team. We started dropping the pilot, the Lean UX pilot, and started integrating it into the daily work for the teams. Having weekly goals. Hey guys, what assumptions are you looking to validate, invalidate this week? What next? What have you learned? And as soon as we started to do that, as soon as we started to put that structure in place, they relaxed. Bit of a paradox. So another word or phrase, I really hate this. Does anybody, Sprint Zero? Anybody do Sprint Zeros? Yep. Look, I've got to be honest, I hate the phrase Sprint Zero. And to me, it's kind of that connotation of, hey, look, someone's got a baton. And they've got a baton of information, and they're racing down a track, and they're going to hand it over to a delivery team. And the delivery team's grabbing this stuff, grabbing these requirements. And you know what? They're building up speed as quickly as they possibly can to get to their maximum velocity to deliver this thing to the finish line. And that's not what the sort of agile I want to be involved with, and it's not the sort of agile that we want at BNZ Digital. We want teams to start very early on with imperfect knowledge and start to think and question about those assumptions and get them involved very early on. The problem we had is very early on, the project manager for business said, hang on, Sprint Zero is extending. We've got a lot of OPEX going on here. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of money, and all we're doing is we're extending Sprint Zero. Now, we did some stuff with OPEX and CAP, but fundamentally, his perception was we're extending this Sprint Zero, and then once we know what to build, that's when we're generating all this great stuff, this capitalizable stuff. And we needed to build trust with the project manager, trust with our stakeholders very early. And we did that through outputs and outcomes. As Claire mentioned earlier, we took a 52-week projects. We went through the assumptions. We looked at the personas. We went and spoke to the customer. And we realized, you know what? We don't have to do 52 weeks worth of work. We don't have to do any work here. So we freed a team up to go and work on something more important. Same-day clear payment template, another example. And another piece, we had a large project where we went from a large piece of work down to 2 small features. Lowered the output, delivered the same outcome for the customer. And now our biggest advocate, ironically, is our project manager, because he can see the value in this. He can see the value that we're delivering these great outcomes much quicker, and he can see the benefit. So these are our core words. These are the words, and this is the vocabulary that we've really introduced as part of our Lean UX journey. Customer at the heart of everything we do. Foundational is those assumptions. We think about the problem. We look at the outcome rather than the output. We think about the customer need. Do they really need this thing or do they want it? We think about not now. We think about pausing work. We don't have to build all this stuff as quickly as we possibly can. We can wait. We think about invalidating and validating, running experiments on these assumptions, and success, and celebrating our success. And this has really changed the vocabulary that we use. And we've got a shared language now, which is a shared language of relationships, and our relationship to the customer. So it's a relationship to our customer, it's a relationship to the product, and the product that brings value to the customer. It's not about frameworks. Our language is about the why we do things, not what we do. It's not about the frameworks. It's about the principles. It's not about the practices. And now, you know what? If someone talks about velocity or someone talks about a Google design sprint or Scrum or Kanban, you know what? We know it's just a framework. We know we want the same thing. We want the same outcome for our customers. And this has been really, really powerful for us. And what it's done is it's led to some powerful questions. So at the start, we said that teams want to have input into what to build and how to build it. So you know what? When we go around the teams now, we ask these powerful questions. Hey guys, so what is the problem you're looking to solve? Who is it for and what do you think they need? How and when will you know that you are succeeding? And we expect our team members to be able to answer this stuff now because they're all involved with this stuff and they understand the customer, they understand the problem, they understand the assumptions.
Right, so to wrap up, I'm going to talk really slowly because we've still got 10 minutes. We've been on quite a journey, I guess, BNZ Digital and Lean UX, getting together, trying it out. We've really had to think on our feet, and I think what Lean UX was to us 6 months or a year ago is completely different now. We've evolved quite a lot of the practices and ideas and exercises. We've had a lot of success stories, a lot of fail whales, like it's been classic, great. And at the start, so we needed Lean UX to have a name, we needed it to have books and exercises and a way to sell it in, a way to share information and get everyone on board with it. But I guess now as it's evolved, we kind of want the next step to be full assimilation. We don't want this to be called Lean UX anymore. We want it to be just the way that we do things. These exercises that we've evolved for our teams, this is just the way BNZ Digital build software, make projects, solve problems for customers. Yeah, so I really hope that some of our observations that we've talked about today have been of interest to you. Thank you so much for having us. Hit us up on Twitter or if you want to talk to us after this. But I think now we're finishing up and having some questions. Thank you.